All right, sounds amazing. So, this portion of this mix was difficult for me, adding in the 808. And I'm not going to say it was difficult. I'm going to say it was challenging a little bit because there was two 808s, same pattern, but two 808 sounds that were very similar to each other. They probably started off sounding nowhere near the same, but I like by the way I mixed it, and they ended up sounding similar, and I couldn't choose between which one to add into the mix. I asked my brothers, I asked people, and they were like, "Yo, they really can't tell the difference, or they can tell the difference, but they both sound really good." So I think I'm gonna have both of them in there somehow. But let me just show you what I did to them. All right, first 808, King 808. I'm gonna let you hear how it's a lot of plugins, a lot of effects, but really not too many. So what I did to this 808 was, let me see what this gain is doing. Nothing. All right. All right, so here's the signal without any effects at all. No. It sounds, honestly, it sounds pretty good the way it is, meaning like it sounds good, but it can sound much better, and really that sounds like it would have been acceptable 4 or 5 years ago. Right now though, got to do a lot to it and make it sound loud and upfront. So the first thing I did was I added this Neutron plugin, and I do this sometimes just to kind of see what Track Assistant does. So when I hit it, I guess it showed me these few things. Let me turn it on. It equalized it. Even though I have the equalizer off, so I didn't end up using that equalizer. It put an exciter and 2 compressors on it, and the way it sounded, really, I liked it. So here's how that sounds. Before, after. I feel like it controlled it a little bit more, and it added some frequencies. I mean, I could do some gain matching a little bit because it did sound like it got lower. So instantly, without it on, it's at 8.9, 8.7. With it on, it goes down to 9.9. So I lose a decibel, which I can make up later, but that's okay. I'll leave that decibel. All right, boom. Next thing I do is I add this bass rider, and I think I kind of went out of order with this, but it ended up sounding all right. I added this bass rider just to really make the low sounds, the low frequencies. I mean, the lower peaks of the bass, meaning whatever notes were not loud enough, this bass rider will ride the beat and bring up or bring down according to whatever threshold I set to the volume of the bass. So I call this bass tail because the tail end of the bass was what usually kind of decays, and this just helps it stay louder. And then I add this LA2A compressor. I just like the way it sounded, and it kind of glued what I did. It glued the bass rider, you know, and the compression a little bit further. That's what I think this plugin is good for, like really taking everything you do to a mix and then initially putting it all together. Here's how it sounds. Very little compression, just about a decibel or two, tops. 1.5 really. Alright, next thing I did was I boosted some frequencies and I cut a little bit. So here's how that sounds. I boosted at around 30 to 50, really around 50, 40-ish. 38 to 50-ish, but I also do a cut as well. So this is boosting at 53, actually, a shelf at 53 and a cut at 30. So combining those two together helps get rid of some low end and boost some low end at the same time. All right, and then I add everything that I'm doing is very subtle, so you can keep doing subtle things to get the sound that you want. If you do things in drastic ways, you know, it's gonna affect the mix too much, and then you're not gonna like how it ends up sounding. So it's good to just, you know, use plugins that add a minimal amount of effects, and plugins like these, like this Max Bass by Waves, does that. So I'm adding some more additional low frequencies. It's called ultra low extender. That's the preset I used. And let me let you hear how that sounds. Alright, and the last thing I did in this chain, as far as affecting the tone, was adding this R bass in around 80. I literally didn't add any intensity. I just let the signal pass through this plugin, and it automatically brought the bass up, or it added some harmonics that sounded pleasing to me. All right, everything off. Everything on. Now that's a lot of low energy, but I'm telling you, it just sounds good. I think that low energy, that's what people want to hear these days. You know what I mean? People like that very, very boomy ass bass in a club or even in your car, and that just achieves that, adding those plugins. And then the next thing I did was I took that whole signal chain and all of those frequencies, all of that equalization and compression and everything, and I sent that whole chain to a bus where I did some additional equalization. But the reason why I sent that whole signal was basically like sending a copy of it through a bus, and I sent the knob of the, as far as the amount of that bus to 100%, and then doing that sends the whole signal to this bus. But then I'm also, as far as a copy goes, kind of like parallel compression, where you send a signal to another bus or another chain to that exact signal to like compress it tightly. Instead of compressing it tightly, I want to get rid of all of the low and most of the high end frequencies. So let me let you hear what I'm talking about. Here's with it on. You know what? I got something. I gotta mute this other. Sorry, I had to mute this other 808 that was being sent there because it's similar to the, like I said, to the, you know, both 808s are similar, but here's how that sounds. So come on. So I do that, take those frequencies out. Mind you, this is a copy of the record, of the bass. And then I distort it with this Manny distortion. And doing this just kind of like gives it that gritty sound that is heard on laptops and stuff like that, and on your phone. And then I use Neutron and this gain knob. I actually end up deciding not to use Neutron now that I remember, but I was trying to see what happens if I added width to it. That's what it sounded like. And I want to achieve that type of effect, but I rather use, I'm not sure which one sounds better actually. Here's the gain, the phase of the signal with the left phase invert button turned on, which kind of automatically gives it, if you look at the stereo field. It's literally being sent to the left and the right, if you can see it here. See, it's just like a horizontal line. And now if I mute that, it turns mono, and if I turn the neutron too, by as far as adding the width, it's kind of doing something similar, but it looks like it's just muddying up the I guess the stereo field. So I'm not gonna do that. This looks more visually appealing as far as mixing goes to me, and it sounds like it's on the left and the right ear. And I'm gonna do that, and I'm gonna add that to the original bass. Alright, so that technique makes it sound wider, and overall that bass just sounds much better. So if we do it before and after between all the effects, this is how it sounded before. Sorry, this is how it sounds before. Which doesn't sound bad, you know, but again, I want it to sound more modern and better. All right, and that's with all the plugins and the effects. So you're really not losing. You're really not losing anything. You're gaining. It's like more body to the bass without being too overbearing and too much. So I'm gonna play that kick with the rest of the instruments. I mean that 808 with the rest of the instruments, so you can kind of hear. And that would necessarily really is the whole beat right there. You know, I'm just gonna have to decide which 808 I'm gonna use, and I'm gonna let you hear that 808, the one I'm talking about too. And that 808 has a nice glide to it too. So the second 808 that I had to decide which one I'm going to use. The second 808 is it doesn't have the signal itself sounded better. It didn't have that much free. It didn't need too much as far as trying to make it sound modern, but I did do the same type of parallel, you know, as far as making the stereo field sound wider as far as the bass goes, making the bass sound wider, which was turning this gain plugin on and hitting the left phase invert button. I did do that as well, but as far as what's on the actual chain, it's totally different. So the sample itself was from the Drums That Knock kit, so it already had like a very, very strong signal. Let me just, I got my little MIDI keyboard that I use sometimes to replace my actual huge keyboard that I lost. Not lost, but I don't have access to right now. I'm gonna plug this up so you can hear what I'm talking about. I'm a little bit out of order. You know what? Instead of doing that, I'm gonna use Logic's in-house keyboard by hitting Command K just really fast so you can hear the sample. That's pretty much, well, let me turn all the effects off. That's the 808. It sounded like a much stronger signal, more cleaner than the one that I had. So to this, I just did very minimal things. I turned this, let me let you hear how it sounds. Put an equalizer on there, cutting some of the low end frequencies and some of the unnecessary high frequencies. Went straight to the R bass, let it pass through. I boosted at 80, about 2.3 as far as intensity goes. Alright, and then I added distortion straight to the track. I just used Logic's distortion 2, and I'd set it to the growl plugin preset. Alright, and then essentially I just did the same thing as far as the parallel, sent it to the bus, and I put all these effects on them. Honestly, I don't even think I need this equalizer. It sounds better without it on. And that bass rider, I can turn it off too. I like the way it sounds right here. So if you compare that bass to this one, they sound really similar, don't they? Then the other one. So basically, I think this 808 has much more of a glide to it, and this one has much more of a punchy, stuttery type of effect. So within the mix, I'm gonna let you hear how the second one sounds. And that sounds like this. I don't know, I like that one. I kinda like that one more, yo, to me personally. Here's the other one. Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna play them side by side. So I'm gonna mute one. I'm gonna turn both of them solo. Mute that, and then this is how I'm gonna let you hear it on that one, and then that one playing right after it. The 808, King 808 first, and then 808 2. Learn that. That's about to be my dance right there. So I'm gonna keep both just like that in that order. I'm gonna let that one go first, and then that one come in, and then that one and that one. And I'm just gonna, there's no rules to this shit. I'm gonna have both. Meaning, the rules are, as long as you follow fundamentals as far as mixing and mastering, as far as creativity, you can do whatever you want.